What happens when one of the most polarizing figures in modern royalty walks into the lion's den and the lion doesn't blink? The lights were blinding, the studio crackling with energy as cameras zoomed in on Piers Morgan, poised behind his desk. His signature smirk was present, but his eyes were sharp. This wasn't going to be an ordinary segment. Tonight, he said, we welcome someone whose name alone could divide a dinner table, Meghan Markle. A ripple of tension moved through the audience. From stage left, Meghan stepped out with the grace of a practiced performer. She carried herself like royalty, even if she'd shed the title. Her smile was tight, her posture calculated. Applause erupted. Polite, not passionate. Piers extended a hand, which she barely touched. "Thanks for joining us," he began cordially. "Of course," she replied, her tone cool. "Glad to clear the air, once again." If she was trying to come off humble, it wasn't working. There was something defiant about her calmness, as if she was bracing for battle, not a conversation. Piers wasted no time. "Let's start with the obvious. Your public image has been complicated." Meghan let out a soft, rehearsed laugh. "You mean targeted, right?" Piers tilted his head. "I mean polarizing. Some see you as a brave voice, others, not so much." "That's not really my concern," she said, flipping her hair back. "I don't exist to please strangers." The audience shifted. One woman in the front row raised her eyebrows. Piers smiled faintly. "Well, when you take Netflix deals and podcast sponsorships, surely public perception is part of the package." Meghan leaned forward, her voice smooth but sharp. "And when you host this show, is your job to ask questions or sling judgments?" The crowd murmured. Piers didn't flinch. "My job is to get answers, so let's get one. Do you feel you've contributed at all to the media chaos that surrounds you?" She blinked. "Absolutely not. I've been chased, harassed, lied about, never exaggerated, never manipulated the narrative." Her lips curled into a half smile. "You sound like a Daily Mail headline." This time, a few chuckles broke out, but they were nervous. Piers nodded. "And yet, you willingly sat down with Oprah. You created a docuseries. You wrote a children's book, a podcast, which women around the world loved, by the way," she interjected. "Yes, but they also wondered, when does it stop being advocacy and start being self-branding?" Meghan's face hardened. "When people in power speak, it makes others uncomfortable," she said. "I'm used to that." Piers folded his hands. "Or maybe, just maybe, it's because the brand contradicts the behavior." A silence fell over the room. Meghan blinked slowly, then let out a dry laugh. "I see, this is going to be one of those interviews." Piers didn't blink. "No, Meghan, this is going to be the interview." The camera panned wide as the tension thickened. You could almost hear viewers at home leaning closer to their screens. Meghan sat stiffly in her chair. Her polished demeanor was still intact, but a flicker of something else began to show. Annoyance? Arrogance? Whatever it was only getting started. The room had cooled noticeably. Studio air conditioning? Maybe, but more likely it was the shift in energy. Piers leaned back slightly, studying Meghan with the kind of calm precision that came from decades of interviewing political heavyweights and controversial icons. Meghan, on the other hand, looked like she'd just realized she was no longer in control of the room. "I want to give you the benefit of the doubt," Piers said. "So let's talk about your time in the royal family. You've said you were silenced, isolated, unsupported. Do you stand by that?" "I lived it," Meghan replied, her voice sharp. "No one gets to question that." Piers raised an eyebrow. "Even those who say you were difficult behind the scenes," her tone dropped. "Those people hide behind anonymity. I don't respond to cowards." There it was, the first real crack. Not in the audience, not on camera, in her. Her rehearsed, perfectly PR-polished exterior was faltering. "And yet," Piers continued gently, "multiple staffers described your behavior as manipulative and condescending. Are they all lying?" Meghan's smile returned, thin, plastic. "You know, Piers, it's funny how women with opinions are always called difficult." "It's not your opinion people take issue with," he replied. It's how you deliver it. You've claimed to be a victim of the media, yet you constantly court it. That hit. She shifted in her seat, crossed her arms. If I didn't speak, I'd be criticized for staying silent. If I speak, I'm accused of seeking attention. Which is it? Maybe it's not about whether you speak, he said calmly. Maybe it's about what you say and how often it contradicts itself. There was a noticeable pause. Meghan's lips parted, but no words came immediately. The audience was dead silent now. Everyone could feel it. The tightrope had narrowed. You don't like me, Meghan said finally, her tone icy. This isn't about liking, Piers said. It's about truth. And who decides what that is, she snapped. You? The tabloids? The trolls online? No, he said. The viewers, the public, the people you've dismissed as irrelevant. She scoffed. I never said that. You implied it, Piers replied. Repeatedly. You've called the monarchy outdated. You've ridiculed their traditions, but you still use the titles when it suits you. That's a cheap shot, Meghan hissed. Is it, he pressed, or is it uncomfortable because it's true? Another long silence. Meghan turned slightly away from him, clearly restraining herself. She exhaled, not dramatically, but deliberately. She was rattled, and it showed. Let's be honest, she said coldly. You brought me here to attack me. No, Piers said, leaning forward. I brought you here to tell your story. But what I'm hearing sounds more like deflection than honesty. Meghan's fingers tapped against the armrest. You keep talking about accountability, she said. But when do people like you take any? For the lies, the headlines, the hate? When it's deserved, he answered. But when everything becomes about you, when every criticism is dismissed as racism or sexism or jealousy, you remove yourself from responsibility. Her eyes narrowed. Are you seriously sitting there accusing me of playing the victim? Piers didn't blink. I'm saying that people are tired of the performance. A gasp from the audience? From Meghan herself? No one could tell anymore. The studio lights were bright, but the mood was dark. Meghan adjusted her blazer, a gesture meant to appear poised, but her hands trembled just slightly. This wasn't the glowing Netflix cut. This was live, unfiltered. And Meghan Markle, for the first time in a long time, was not in charge of the narrative. By now, the audience wasn't just listening. They were leaning forward in their seats, expressions mixed with disbelief, tension, and something else. A collective shift was happening. Not in favor of Meghan, she must have felt it too. Meghan uncrossed her legs and leaned forward, her tone dripping with sarcasm. So let me guess, next you'll ask if I brainwashed Harry. I wasn't going to say that, Piers replied evenly, but now that you mention it, a few chuckles broke out in the crowd. That was the moment. The tide turned. Meghan's expression froze. The mask, already cracking, began to slip faster. You think this is funny? She snapped, eyes darting across the audience. Is this entertainment for you? A beat of silence. It's a conversation, Piers answered carefully. And perhaps if it had gone differently, people wouldn't be laughing. But they see through performance, Meghan. She scoffed. Performance? I've lived this. Every headline, every intrusion. Do you know what it's like to wake up and see lies about yourself every single day? Do you know what it's like, Piers countered, to be a viewer watching someone paint herself as a victim on every platform, while simultaneously selling the story to Netflix, Spotify, and publishing deals? Her jaw tightened. I have every right to tell my story. Absolutely, he said, nodding. But the question is, do people still believe it? The room fell deadly quiet. This wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was brutal. You're clearly bitter, Meghan said, her voice rising. Because I walked away. Because I didn't play the role your press demanded of me. I don't need you to play a role, Piers replied calmly. I just need you to answer the questions. She folded her arms tightly. You want a villain? Fine. I'll be your villain. That's what you all want anyway, right? The evil Duchess, the American invader, the woman who dared speak out. No, Piers said. We want authenticity, not buzzwords. Gasps again. The air had thickened. Meghan's facade was almost gone now. and her anger, barely concealed, was beginning to leak into every word. "You know what's exhausting?" she continued. "Having to be perfect just to be accepted. Every misstep becomes a weapon." "And yet," Piers said, voice steady, "you've monetized those missteps quite well." Meghan's head tilted slowly, eyes narrowing. "You're pathetic." The words hit the studio like a slap. Even Piers blinked, not in shock, but in recognition. There it was, the moment she lost control. "I beg your pardon," he said softly. "You heard me," she said, now fully leaning in. "You hide behind this desk pretending to be a journalist, but all you are is a glorified gossip columnist with a camera crew." Some gasps turned to murmurs. And then, applause. But not for Meghan, for Piers, who sat motionless, his eyes locked on hers. "You came here to control the narrative," he said finally. "And when that didn't work, you insulted me, the audience, and anyone who dared to question you. That says more about you than anything I could ever ask." Meghan opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her eyes flicked to the audience. But now their stares weren't supportive. They were uncomfortable, even skeptical. She straightened her back, forced a thin smile. Typical. Just another British attack on an American woman. The room shifted again. That line, maybe it worked in interviews before, but here, in this moment, it sounded desperate. Piers remained still, then leaned in slightly. "No, Meghan," he said. "It's not about where you're from. It's about who you've become." A hush settled once more, and for the first time all night, Meghan Markle had no comeback. The silence that followed was unlike any moment prior. The studio, once buzzing with whispers, reactions, and breathless laughter, had settled into a cold, watchful stillness. Meghan sat frozen in her chair. Her smile had vanished. Her shoulders were squared, arms stiff across her chest like a barricade. But behind her eyes, something flickered. Not defiance, but calculation, as if she was quickly reassessing the playing field. She turned to Piers and said, more softly this time, "You've had it out for me from the beginning." Piers didn't flinch. "I've held you to the same standard as any public figure who seeks power and influence. That's not animosity. That's accountability." She gave a humorless laugh. "Accountability? From a man who's made a career dragging women through the mud?" The audience stirred. A few nods, but more stiffened backs, uneasy glances. "Again with the victimhood," Piers said quietly. "Meghan, at what point does personal responsibility enter your vocabulary?" "Excuse me?" Her voice rose again. Piers stayed calm. "You married into an ancient institution with full awareness. You embraced the spotlight until it stopped flattering you. Then you ran. And now you rewrite history to suit your image." "You don't know me," Meghan snapped. "You only know headlines." "I know patterns," he replied, eyes sharp. "And I know when someone refuses to answer a question because they're afraid of the truth." That landed. Meghan leaned forward. "Fine," she said tightly. "Let's talk truth. The truth is I was left alone in a place that fed off my silence. The truth is I was dying inside and no one cared. Not the palace, not the press, not you." Piers didn't blink. "Then why does it feel like you've never stopped talking since?" A few people in the crowd audibly inhaled. The tension now was a pressure cooker. Meghan's lips parted, but for once she didn't immediately speak. Piers went on. "You claim to want privacy, yet you gave Oprah your trauma, Netflix your marriage, and Spotify your grief. You said you were silenced, but you've shouted louder than anyone else in modern royal history." She gritted her teeth. "That's called reclaiming your voice." "No," he said firmly. "It's called repackaging your grievances for applause. But the applause is fading, Meghan, and you know it." Her mouth tightened. That flicker in her eyes? It wasn't calculation anymore. It was panic. "I don't owe you anything," she muttered. "No, you don't," he agreed. "But you owe the public some honesty. They supported you. They rooted for you. Many still want to believe in you. But every time you dodge a question or mock a critic, you lose them." Meghan sat in stunned silence. "I didn't bring you here to humiliate you," Piers continued. "But I also won't let you hijack this show with a script you think you've perfected." The lights felt hotter now. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before cutting between them. "Say what you came to say," he added, without the spin. "Why did you come here, Meghan?" "Really?" For a moment, she just stared at him. Then with a sharp exhale through her nose, she replied, "To remind people I'm still here." And there it was, raw and unpolished. Piers leaned back, letting the moment hang. The audience wasn't squirming anymore. They were listening, not cheering, not booing, just listening. But whether Meghan realized it or not, the power dynamic had shifted for good, and the final act had just begun. The pause was deafening. Meghan Markle's final admission, "To remind people I'm still here," still hung in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. Piers Morgan didn't speak right away. He let the weight of her words fill the studio, letting the silence do what no question could. Meghan, on the other hand, looked like she regretted the honesty. She shifted in her seat, crossed her legs, uncrossed them again. Her jaw tensed. Piers leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, hands clasped, not as a host, but as a man speaking directly to someone who had nowhere left to run. "So this wasn't about truth," he said. "It wasn't about clearing your name. It wasn't about setting the record straight. This was about relevance." Meghan didn't respond. "You came here thinking you could control the narrative one more time," he continued. "But this isn't Netflix. This isn't a staged podcast. This is real. And you're not used to that anymore, are you?" She straightened her back, masking offense with pride. "I came here to speak for myself. That's more than most people ever do." "No, Meghan," Piers said, voice sharp but not raised. "You came here expecting the same applause you always demand. But people are tired. Tired of being told they're racist because they ask questions. Tired of being labeled toxic because they didn't immediately agree with you. Tired of your us versus them routine." The audience was dead silent. Not even a cough, just the air, heavy and electric. "You keep telling the world you were silenced," Piers added. "Yet you made millions off telling that story over and over again. How many versions are we supposed to accept?" "I was hurt," Meghan snapped. "And now you're hurting your credibility." She shone on him a look, a blend of anger and disbelief. But Piers didn't blink. "This isn't the royal family's doing. This isn't the media's doing. This, this is all you." Meghan opened her mouth. Piers raised a hand, cutting her off. Not rudely, but firmly. "You've had an hour. You've dodged, mocked, deflected, and twisted. But here's the bottom line, Meghan. The mask has slipped. And the people watching, they've seen it. Not the Duchess, not the victim, not the icon. Just you." He paused, letting it settle. "You don't need a crown or a title to be respected," he finished. "You just need honesty, something you left behind a long time ago." For a beat, nothing happened. And then Meghan slowly reached to her lapel, unclipped the microphone, and stood. No theatrics, no words, just silence. She turned her back and walked off the set, her heels clicking with each step. A sharp, deliberate rhythm that echoed through the studio. The camera stayed with Piers. He looked straight into the lens. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said calmly, "thank you for joining this. I didn't plan on this ending, but perhaps it was inevitable." Applause didn't follow, not yet. The screen faded to black first, and then the eruption. Online, in homes, on headlines across the world. Meghan Markle walks off live interview after fiery exchange with Piers Morgan. The mask slipped. Viewers stunned as Meghan breaks down on air. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. The internet was ablaze. But inside the studio, as the lights cooled and the cameras shut off, one thing was certain: people had finally seen the real Meghan Markle, and no carefully curated brand could undo that.